Before the first restyling, the 200 was equipped with the good old petrol 2UZ Fe. This engine with a cast iron cylinder block, inherited from the Land Cruiser 100, is considered very reliable. The odometer of most cars easily crosses the 500,000 mark before the engine is sent for overhaul. The only thing that will need to be done besides regular maintenance is to change the timing belt along with the rollers and pump once every 100,000 kilometers. And of course, be prepared for excessive fuel consumption. Only the most careful and calm drivers will see the figure of 20 liters per 100 kilometers on the onboard computer screen. The 2012 modernization brought a fresh V8 with a volume of 4.6 liters 1 UR-FE. It is more powerful, torque-free and a little more environmentally friendly. It already has an aluminum cylinder block and a chain drive for the gas distribution mechanism. Moreover, the life of the chain drive is quite decent, 300,000 kilometers. True, compared to the background of its almost ideal predecessor, the engine will only be good. Because in order to comply with modern environmental standards, the engine was equipped with a secondary air supply system in the catalyst, and if it malfunctions, the engine goes into emergency mode, producing limited power and displaying a bunch of diagnostic errors. Its components, a pump and 2 valves, cost a lot of money, and it can start acting up starting from 80,000 kilometers, or even earlier, while repairing the system does not guarantee its further trouble-free operation. Therefore, after the warranty expires, many owners remove it along with the catalysts and repaint the control unit. Another common problem with motors is water pump leaks. The pump loses its tightness after about 100,000 kilometers. Moreover, even if you skip this moment, nothing critical will happen if you monitor the antifreeze level from time to time. Well, the last minus is the intake manifold, in which the dampers become sour due to age and cracks appear. The most popular aftermarket Cruisax with diesel in 1VD, FTV from a caring owner who carries out maintenance every 5 to 7,000 kilometers and does not pour too much viscous oil type 0W30, this engine with 2 turbochargers can also plow 500,000 kilometers. If these rules are neglected, then during runs over 100,000 kilometers, increased wear of the crankshaft liners may be observed, up to their rotation. By the way, keep in mind that a diesel engine may require an unscheduled service visit because there are no regulations for replacing the fuel filter for these engines. The inscription on the instrument cluster will remind you of the need to update the element. The filters themselves come in 2 types, 10 and 30 microns. It is believed that 30 micron is designed for winter diesel fuel, but there is an opinion that it is always better to use it. That is, both in winter and in summer, because the 10 micron version, after 2-3,000 kilometers of operation, may not pass diesel fuel well, and as a result the car will scare with alarm messages and stop driving normally. The chain drive of the gas distribution mechanism, like on its gasoline counterparts, is also ready to work for a solid 250 to 300,000 kilometers, if, of course, you monitor your well-being. The crankshaft damper and power steering pump chain stabilizer should also last 250,000. And turbochargers, but only if the engine is equipped with a turbo timer. Without it, the life of the snails is greatly reduced, and generally standing and idling after fast runs along the highway is very useful for the 1VD FTV unit. This will extend the life of the rear cylinder walls, which often suffer from local overheating. True, a number of servicemen note that intensive wear of the turbo compressor is often associated with poor coordination of their work, when one of the turbines does not blow out, and the second begins to overinflate. As a result, the service life is sharply reduced, and as a result, repairs may be required after the first 6-digit mark on the odometer. There is another problem associated with turbines, when the engine stops spinning above 2,500 revolutions per minute and the turbine control units display an error. They are located in the right wheel arch and they suffer from dampness. Over time, the case sealant dries out and moisture gets inside, which kills the electronic filling. Repairing the block is impossible, and there is only one preventative measure: moving the blocks to the battery area, either in front of the headlights, or between the wing and the battery. In 2015, Toyota decided to introduce newfangled Denso piezo injectors instead of electromagnetic ones. With them the diesel engine became more powerful and environmentally friendly. But the technology turned out to be clearly crude, otherwise how can one explain that some injectors were mercilessly overfilled, while others worked almost flawlessly? However, this disease is probably unlikely to affect used cruisers because overfilling usually happened with runs of up to 20 to 30,000 kilometers. With mileages of 250,000 kilometers and above, the health of the fuel equipment is worth checking, and there is also an unproven, but valid opinion that the health of this 8 is harmed by the exhaust gas recirculation system. Fans of the model insist that you need to immediately turn off the EGR, but we will be less categorical. Regular cleaning is enough. Just like cleaning the crankcase ventilation system, it certainly won't make things any worse. It will be better because there are a lot of examples of how an engine overgrown with soot was brought to the point of piston rings with a mileage of only up to 100,000 kilometers. This especially often happened with those cars that often sit idle in city traffic jams, and this is fraught with at least scuffing on the cylinder walls. Let's move on to the transmission. There is almost nothing to say about the ultra-reliable 5-range automatic FSHY SHT F750A that was installed on the good old gasoline V8. This is a fantastically durable unit that is extremely difficult to kill even with frankly barbaric operation. 6 speeds of the Aisin AB60F are less durable because its creators placed more emphasis on peppy dynamics. Therefore, the clutch on the torque converter locks wear out more intensively, which means they contaminate the oil with the products of their work earlier. However, in both boxes it is advisable to update the fluid every 50 to 60,000 kilometers, and then the first opening of the unit will take place no earlier than after 300 or even 400,000 kilometers. The all-wheel drive system is built around a Torsen limited slip differential. Since 2012, the transmission began to please with its reliability. Before that, anything happened. The chain was stretched, the actuators failed and the differential gears were chipped. True, after the first restyling the situation improved, but for this the engineers had to not only modify the transfer case, but also strengthen the frame. Experts considered that the insufficiently rigid skeleton overloads the all-wheel drive elements, namely bearings, differential, and spline joints, but if an elderly specimen is pushed, then broken splines and cardan shaft crosspieces will most likely be to blame. At the same time, the front drive shaft is killed faster. The Cruzac suspension is simply a front suspension on double wishbones. Moreover, the original levers are quite expensive, but there are also non-original options. However, considering that the chassis is unlikely to require a major revision before 200,000 kilometers, you don't have to skimp on original parts. The only real weakness is the anti-roll bar bushings, both front and rear. They last an average of 50,000 kilometers. The proprietary KDSS kinetic suspension stabilization system deserves special attention, which allows you to reduce roll on asphalt without interfering with articulation off-road. Hydraulic cylinders are installed on the left side of the body, front and rear, which allow the anti-roll bars to be opened and closed depending on driving conditions. With age, KDSS begins to suffer from senile problems and after each replacement of the anti-roll bar bushings. Well, or if the car fell on one of the sides, you need to adjust the position of the body on a flat surface. To do this, on the left side member in the area of the rear wheel, unscrew the protective cover, behind which there is a shut-off valve. And use a wrench to carefully unscrew it literally 2 or 3 turns, then rock the body and perform the reverse operations. We determine the uniformity of the body position by measuring the distance from each wheel to the central part of the wheel arch, but due to its location under the bottom, the block often suffers from corrosion, which can corrode, for example, the edges or threads on the valves. Also, older specimens may experience leaks. The new unit will lighten your wallet by 100,000 rubles and, after installation, requires a special station for pumping liquid. In the spring of 2016, Land Cruiser tried on the hydropneumatic suspension from Lexus. Having introduced hydropneumonia elements, the Japanese retained conventional springs. Surprisingly, no repairs or replacements. Hydropneuma is expected to last 400 to 500,000 kilometers. It is only important to regularly, that is, every 100,000 kilometers, change the working fluid in the system. Perhaps the weakest link in the chassis is that the Cruzac's brake system slows down poorly and at the same time intensively wears out the pads and discs. The former last about 20,000 kilometers, the latter about 40,000, however, this service life can be shortened if the driver often practices intense braking, allowing the mechanisms to overheat. The same 40,000 kilometers is a critical mileage for the front calipers, and when overhauling them, it makes sense to install stainless steel pistons. But even after such tuning, it is still important to regularly clean and lubricate the guides. By the way, if there are 4 piston cars in front, then the Japanese may do with 1 piston system in the back. What kind of braking efficiency can we even talk about? To really improve braking dynamics, you will have to install more efficient discs, calipers, and pads. But remember that such tuning will hit your pocket hard because all the modifications along with the installation can easily cost ₹500,000. But we weren't ready to hear so much negativity about the people's favorite. In fact, compared to its classmates, the Toyota Land Cruiser 200 SUV is almost problem-free. And therefore, decent options do not stagnate for a long time. In reality, you already have to be afraid of relatively expensive consumables, high fuel consumption and, of course, incredible popularity among car thieves, and you need to think carefully about the last fact unless you, of course, want to lose everything at one moment that you have acquired beyond your means labor.